guys, welcome back to my channel. So I have a review video for you today, and I'm going to preface this by saying it's slightly on the negative side, so I apologise for that, but I just wanted this video to be as comprehensive as possible. A couple of years ago I uploaded a first impressions video of this travel system that I'm going to be reviewing today, and I still get comments and views to this day and people asking kind of how I'm getting on with it and things like that. So I really wanted to kind of follow up, say what I thought using it, having used it for a certain length of time. I'm not using it anymore, spoiler. So like I say, it's slightly negative, but I just want to be kind of as comprehensive as possible and just kind of include a lot of information, because I feel like quite a lot of reviews on this pram are just like, yeah, it's great for the money, like, get it. But I want to kind of delve into a little bit more detail. So I do have a list here of like pros and cons and things like that. So without further ado, let's dive in. So we'll go on to the pros first, and the first thing is something that we were kind of looking for when we were looking into travel systems, and that was it having like a space saving kind of element to it. And what I mean by that is the carry cot and like the seat are kind of one unit. So it's like one piece of like metal or whatever it is, I don't actually know what it's made of, and then like two separate bits of fabric that kind of make it two different items. So you've got one piece of fabric that you put around the frame that makes it into the travel cot, and then you've obviously like got like a wooden base and a mattress thing in it, and then you can take all of that off, zip it all off the frame, and then actually, do you zip it on? I don't think you do. You strap on this other piece of material to make it into like the seat. So that is something that we were looking for, although I found it did have its downsides. So I'd say if that is something that you are looking at, maybe kind of do your research on that just to kind of see if it will still suit you, because like I say, there's parts of it being like that that kind of draw it down a little bit. So yeah, that is the first thing. It is kind of like a space saving option if that is something that you're kind of interested in. I also like that the handle goes to like different angles, so it's not adjustable in terms of like length, but you can kind of like tilt the handlebar. I'm going to try and include videos of what I mean just so you can kind of see as I'm talking about things. But yeah, you can kind of angle the handlebar out of the way, like if you sat in a cafe or whatever like that, you can kind of put it out of the way so they're still sat in the pram, but it's not like jolting out at you and kind of getting in the way, which I do really like. The brake is super easy to use. So again, if you've seen my first impressions video on this, then you'll have seen that the brake bar is literally a bar that goes across the whole back, like between the two back wheels, and you can obviously like press it at any point on the bar to put the brake on, which I do really like. A lot of prams these days, including ones that I have tried since this one, have just like one brake pedal on like one side, which can be a little bit awkward. So I do like the fact that it has one kind of big bar, and it's really easy to use, really easy to put on, really easy to take off. And then one thing that is kind of like has pros and cons to it is the basket size on it is really good, but it's really impractical, I have found personally. So when you've actually got stuff in the pram, and then you've got specifically the seat kind of portion, I think this is less of an issue when you're using it with a carry cot, but when you've got the seat on there, it's impossible, near on impossible, to get stuff out of the basket. And I don't know if there's like just some kind of weird design flaw to this or what, but I found to be able to get the stuff out, I had to tilt the seat unit, so it was basically like going from like a normal seat like that to laying almost flat, just so I had the maneuverability to get stuff out from under the pram. I mean, if it's just like little odds and sods that are maybe loose in there, it's probably easy enough to do. But if you've got like your nappy changing bag or a bag of shopping or whatever, it's so hard to get anything out of there, and that really annoyed me. Again, it's not something that I necessarily thought too much about when we first got it, because we weren't really going anywhere or doing very much, but it is something to note. So on to the cons next. So the first thing I have down here is that, and I think quite a lot of people would probably agree with me on this, is that the quality of it for the price is lagging quite a lot. Now, there's certain areas to this, like across the whole travel system, that I mean in terms of quality lagging, and it just feels like it hasn't necessarily gone through quality control and not a lot of things have maybe been thought about. It's worth noting as well that the version that we got was the V3. They did then bring out a V4, but from what I understand, there's not a huge amount of difference between the two. So some of these things might have improved, I don't know, but because the V3 is still available, obviously I wanted to still include these things. So first thing in terms of quality is that there is no real suspension to the pram. There is some suspension, but I have noticed, specifically since using a different pram that has a much better suspension, it is really bad at going like up and down curbs. I live in a kind of like suburban-y kind of area, I guess, and it's mostly kind of like pavements and things like that. There's not a hell of a lot of like grassy areas or anything like that, but even just a walk into town, it is just a bit of a pain if there's not like really nice flushed drop curbs, and that is again not really something that I thought too much about until I'd used something else and thought, oh, actually, like, there is bugger all suspension on this pram, or not that it would lead you to believe anyway. And the second thing, and I don't know if this is as a result of the lack of suspension, is that the handlebar, at least on ours, is really jolty and wobbly, like without even pressing the buttons to kind of tilt it, it wobbles quite a lot, and I don't know if that is just from the force of having to kind of lift it up onto a curb, if you know what I mean. I don't know if it's from doing that or what, but it's almost like a lot of pressure has been put on those kind of joints of the chassis, and it has kind of caused it to maybe do that. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that with this pram. The next thing is the cozy toes. So the cozy toes does my head in for multiple reasons. One, because the material on it doesn't even really allow it to be called a cozy toes. It is so thin. It will maybe act as like a windbreak, but it wouldn't act as like an actual kind of sleeping bag-esque cozy thing for your child to sit in. And the other thing is the way it's positioned. It has to kind of like go around the, I think it's called the bumper bar, and when it does that, it allows this gap about this big between where it's like strapped on and where your child is sitting. So there's this massive gap here for like loads of air and stuff to get down, so it doesn't act as much of a cozy toes at all really. You have to, or at least I found you had to kind of like stuff a blanket down there just to kind of actually act as something. And the other thing is, it's quite small and quite tight, so it would only really work, I feel like, if you've obviously got a smaller child, or just when they are much younger, and they're not kind of outgrowing it in terms of length and things. So I think in terms of that, like, you'd have to buy like a universal separate cozy toes, I think, because the one that's included, it can't even be called a cozy toes. It is just rubbish in my opinion. The next quality kind of lag is around the car seat. Now, I spoke to quite a lot of different people that had this pram actually, or had the whole travel system, because a lot of people that I went to like baby groups with also had this, and they said they found exactly the same thing. So it must be just like a quality thing with them in general rather than just the one that we had, and that is the car seat is just so damn awkward to get off of the ISOFIX base. Although I feel like once you've got the hang of it, it's okay, but getting it off of the adapters that go onto the chassis, it's just ridiculous. Like, it jams all the time. It is so awkward and so frustrating. Like, sometimes you can get one side off but not the other, and then you're left there kind of trying to jiggle it with a baby in it, and it is just really frustrating. Obviously, I know that you're not meant to have a child in the car seat for very long, but you know, if you're just nipping into the shops and you need to kind of put the car seat onto the chassis for like 20 minutes or whatever, then it's fine to do that, but it makes it really hard and quite stressful, in fact, to do that, because there's just something in there that just, I don't know what it is, that just doesn't make it fluid to be able to take it on and off, which is what you need really when it comes down to any kind of baby product, I feel like. So then one of the other things I've got in the kind of quality lagging area is the rain cover. So the rain cover is just made out of this really flimsy thin plastic. It rips really easily. Ours has. Don't get me wrong, it does the job, it keeps her dry, it does what it's meant to do essentially, but I just feel like the quality of it, again, comparing it to other ones, you can tell the difference of the like materials that we used, and I just feel like that's kind of reflected quite a lot throughout the whole travel system. Likewise, one of my other cons is the hood. So the hood that obviously sits on the main frame, that is the travel cot, and the car seat, no, not car seat, the like toddler seat kind of bit, and that is, it is just, I've got it here to show you in fact. It is so, it's such a weird material for a start. I don't know if you'll be able to kind of like tell what it's like. It's almost like, not quite neoprene, it's not that thick, that's for sure, but it's almost like swimming costume material, and it's just so bizarre, and it's just, I found really, really rubbish. It has no UPV protection. It wouldn't protect really from any elements for that matter, so obviously it has no sun protection. It wouldn't protect you from the rain, so if you did get caught out and you didn't have your rain cover with you or whatever, if you put that over, the rain would literally just go straight through it. It is such a rubbish material to be made out of, and I've also found that the angle of it is just so awkward. So if your child is in like the seat bit like this, and you've kind of got the hood up, it's just at a really kind of awkward point. You want it to be kind of like in between, because if they're like this, you can't actually see them, whereas if it's like that, it doesn't cover them for what you want it to, like, I don't know, to get the sun out of their eyes or whatever. It's just a bit of a crap design, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, that's another one of my cons, is just, and it kind of, like I say, kind of comes under the quality lagging element. I feel like just the materials in general that they've used, you can tell they're quite cheap. So the next two things kind of go together, and that is that you have to remove the seat to be able to fold the travel system. Although that's a lie, you don't. You can fold it, but it would be a hell of a lot more bulky, and that is the other point I was going to say. It is very, very bulky. More so probably because you have to have it in the two parts, but even, like I say, if you can fold it as much as you can with the seat attached, which is possible, but it doesn't go very flat, it takes up literally the whole boot of your car. Obviously it depends on what kind of car you've got, but we've got like a kind of standard size car, and it literally just fills the whole boot. You can't fit much else in there, just like kind of little bits all around it. So if you're going anywhere for any period of time, it's kind of frustrating, and that is not necessarily, again, something that I thought too much about at the time, or something I would kind of have asked about had I seen kind of reviews on this, but it is definitely worth mentioning if you've got to, for example, travel anywhere, like you're traveling to go and see family, or you're going out with maybe someone who's got a smaller car. Like I've done that quite a few times. I've gone out with my mother-in-law who has a KA, and let me tell you, it's a pain in the ass because I can just about get the chassis alone in the boot when the wheels are taken off, and then I have to put the seat section separately just in the car, and it's just frustrating. Obviously I know that that car is extremely small, but it's just worth noting that obviously it doesn't all kind of fold down together all nice and neat. It is very, very bulky. So the last kind of con I have is around the kind of seat portion, and I've put you back a little bit so I can kind of try and show you. And basically, because, oh, I think this is because it is just the material on the frame thing, and it's not like a seat that kind of folds in half as such, but obviously it doesn't lay flat, so I don't know if you'll be able to actually see. This bit here is obviously like the actual seat bit, so when it's upright they have like a place to sit, although in saying that, when they're sat in there they're basically like horizontal anyway. Their hips don't sit in there properly, I found anyway, because it's just a really awkward angle. But yeah, so you either have to have it like bolt upright, which like I say then kind of leads them to be like literally like dangling, or you'll tilt it back. Like for example, if they've fallen asleep and you want to kind of tilt it back, the hips are obviously still sat in a seated position, they're not laying flat. So yeah, it doesn't have a lay flat option, put it that way. But yeah, I think it's just where obviously the frame doesn't fold, doesn't have that option, therefore if you want to lay them down when they're in this part rather than the carry cot, they are sat at that really funny angle, and to me it just didn't sit right with me. When I did eventually use a different pram that did lay flat, I was like, oh my god, this is actually a game changer. Like I didn't even realise, especially like I say if they do kind of fall asleep in the pram. So all in all, I feel like this pram has some good features, like little things, like I say, the big brake bar, the angleable handle, obviously the interchangeable thing is questionable whether it is a pro or con, because like I say it means it doesn't lay flat, but it is space saving, so take what you will from that. But I just think for the cost of it, there is so many better options out there, and I just feel like for the quality that's been put into this, I would rather get something different or spend a tiny bit more. In fact, you probably wouldn't even need to spend that much more, because when I looked this up, I looked it up a little while ago. When we bought it, it was £380 with like a discount code, and when I looked it up recently, it was £450. So it's actually gone up in price quite significantly, and like I say, that's still the older model, that's still the V3. And if you were to buy, like for example, like a Joey pram or something like that, it's £100 less for, in my opinion, a better quality product. And like I say, I don't like to be really negative, especially on like a specific one kind of product review, but I just think it's worth noting some of these things. There are a lot more kind of cons than there are pros, and I just think a lot of people kind of see the price, see the kind of look of it maybe, and think, yeah, that'll do kind of thing. But in my opinion, I don't think it's really worth it. I just think there's so many better options out there for the same money, if not less. Just take this video obviously with a pinch of salt if you are looking at kind of reviews of this travel system, because you're maybe looking at purchasing it. Please just do your research, try and test it out if you can. I don't know what stores actually stock it. At the time when we bought it, it was during COVID, so we couldn't actually go out and test any prams. We were solely relying on review videos and things like that. So I hope you have found this video helpful. Like I say, sorry it was a little bit more on the negative side of things, but yeah, I have, as I say, got a new pram now because we are expecting number 2. So I have currently got a like single to double pram, which I think I might do a review on at some point too, because just putting it out there, I'm really enjoying using it. So I hope you have enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and if you happen to be watching this and you have already had this pram, maybe in the past, pop a comment down below, let me know what your thoughts were on it, because I think it's quite helpful to have different opinions on it. And if you kind of agree on any of the points that I've mentioned in this video, again, pop it down below in a comment, just for the other people watching this. Make sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, because like I say, I'm expecting baby number 2 very, very soon. So I'm doing kind of a lot of kind of baby and lifestyle-y kind of content and general mum life stuff over here. So like I say, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye guys.